Hi, Recapped here. Today I'm going to explain a science fiction horror film called The Mandela Effect. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. A computer programmer, Brendan, and his wife Claire, with their daughter Sam, are spending time on the beach. Sam asks for permission if she can go find snails around the area. Claire agrees on the condition that Sam doesn't go too far from sight. Sam agrees and roams around the beach. After some time, Sam doesn't realize the waves are dragging her Curious George doll away. And when Sam notices, she tries to take the doll, but is also dragged away by the waves. Sam is swept away and drowned at the beach, leaving Brendan and Claire broken. After a few months, Claire tries to move on, but Brendan, who loves his daughter very much, couldn't just let her go. One day, Brendan enters Sam's room and notices Claire packing Sam's things away to move. Brendan stops her and places everything where it was before at the position where Sam kept it before. While doing that, Brendan accidentally sees a book titled The Berenstain Bears. He feels odd because he clearly remembers that the book was previously titled The Berenstain Bears with an E instead of an A. Later that night, he's not able to sleep because of the Berenstain spelling he saw in that book. Suddenly, a strange sound comes from the kitchen. He thinks someone is breaking in, but when he steps into the kitchen with a baseball bat, it turns out to be Matt, his brother-in-law, who came in to look for food in the refrigerator. Brendan prepares some pizza and gives it to him. Matt informs him about a girl he's meeting, and Brendan is happy to hear that. As they're talking, Brendan asks him about the book. Matt remembers that book from his childhood, and he confirms that the book is titled The Berenstain Bears with the letter E. Brendan goes back to Sam's room and brings that book and shows him the spelling. Matt sees it, but it doesn't make him curious. Brendan is still confused about the spelling and decides to do some research. It turns out there are many people who think the writing in the book is the Berenstain Bear with an E. Finally, he finds a theory that explains the incident, namely the Mandela Effect theory. The next day, Brendan sees a photo of his family on the refrigerator. He's confused about its location and asks Claire about it. She replies that it was taken in front of the Griffith Observatory, but Brendan doesn't remember it. Instead, he thinks the picture was taken in Seattle. His wife doesn't respond and tells him to leave because she's busy cooking. Brendan also doesn't want to disturb Claire with his theories and doubts. He then goes to the garage, where Matt is sleeping, and talks to him about the Mandela Effect theory. He shows Matt many articles and videos of people experiencing the Mandela Effect and tries to bring him in on his way, because he strongly believes he's also experiencing something like that. But Matt questions the genuineness of these videos and tells him that even if it's true, it's just a false memory. That night, Claire approaches him and talks about what he talked about with Matt. Brendan decides to lie to her, but she already knew what they were talking about and warned him not to be stuck with memories of Sam. Brendan still believes in his theories and continues looking for information about the Mandela Effect. He also learns about the parallel universe and believes that he now lives in a parallel universe. While doing his study on the topic, he sees on the forum that the Mandela Effect is caused by an experiment with a Large Hadron Collider created by CERN. The experiment was conducted in 2008, and around the same time, many people experienced strange phenomena, one of which is the Mandela Effect. Brendan then meets a priest and asks him questions about Sam and the existence of God. Brendan didn't get the answer he was looking for, so left without discussing his theories and doubts. Later that day, Matt tries to explain to him how the brain works and about false memory from the knowledge he acquired from one of his neurologist friends. But Brendan is far ahead with his theory, so he doesn't believe what Matt says. That night on the dining table, Brendan notices Claire's silence and asks her the reason. She reveals to him how worried she is about his recent day's behavior. She also asks him to talk to her about what's on his mind. Brendan then tries to explain to her by asking what she remembers about the picture of the guy on the Monopoly box. Claire firmly believes that the Monopoly man is wearing a monocle on one of his eyes, but Brendan demands her to confirm that. She reaches the room and then she checks. It turns out the Monopoly man is not using a monocle. Furthermore, Brendan also points out the monkey character Curious George doesn't actually have a tail in the book, but the Curious George doll that Sam was carrying on that day had a tail. Brendan tries to explain all of those theories of the Mandela Effect to her. Brendan feels that Sam's death at that time is just another parallel universe version that entered the current world and then shifts the actual events. But Claire is angry and disappointed with Brendan, who only cares about himself with his strange theories, making them unable to move on. She's scared that all of his beliefs would destroy their relationship, and she wants to be happy with what they have left. But that doesn't stop Brendan from thinking about it. As the days pass, he gets more and more convinced that the Mandela effect actually exists. As he goes deeper and deeper into the topic, he discovers the Mandela effect could occur due to other parallel universes being mixed into the world he's currently living in. Brendan is not trying to prove the existence of the parallel universe or the Mandela effect. He just believes that each parallel universe contains another version of his life, and there's a good chance that his daughter is in one of those universes still alive. He's trying all of these crazy things just to make sure if he has any possible way to bring his daughter back. While doing his research, he comes across the name Dr. Rowland, who's a scientist and a person who believes in the parallel universe. Brendan decides to contact him through a video clip. That didn't work out, so he then reaches out to the university where Dr. Rowland is doing his research. Unfortunately, the doctor is busy and he couldn't discuss his doubts with him. The next day, Brendan tries to see him again. There, the two of them have a chat, and he tells him everything that he needs to know about the parallel universe. The doctor explains that the universe is a computer simulation designed for an unknown purpose. Then the same simulation creates new simulations, but with a different version of the life story every second. The Mandela effect Brendan is experiencing is a bug between those simulations. From everything Rowland tells him, Brendan concludes that if a program forms this world, he could change the program by using script coding, which he was doing from the age of 6. But he can't do it with any ordinary computer. To run a program like that, Brendan needs a computer that is strong enough and powerful enough to run it long enough to have an effect on base reality. Seeing Brendan's interest, Dr. Rowland decides to help him by telling him about the first quantum computer he and his team made. They both believe that the quantum computer has the power to run a program that changes the world. But when they reach the place where the computer is kept, one of Dr. Rowland's colleagues appears, and they're forced to return. Meanwhile, Brendan keeps hearing Sam's voice, and also will have visions of Sam roaming around the house. He tells this to Claire, and she tries to calm him. But deep inside, Claire is scared of his behavior. After these incidents, Brendan decides to go forward with the coding, and looks for books on quantum computer programming to start coding scripts based on them. He also combines some of his game programming code with quantum code, so that he manages to create a new script. That night when he's sleeping, Sam comes into their bed and sleeps between them. Brendan thinks that this is the same vision he used to have. The next morning, Brendan sees Sam again in the kitchen. After confirming what he's seeing with Claire, he believes that this coding is bringing Sam back from the parallel universe, and it actually worked. Without wasting time, Brendan then takes advantage of it by having fun with his daughter. Brendan is happy because he managed to shift the story of Sam's death with another parallel version. While everything is going well, suddenly he notices the weird behavior from Claire. He understands that there is something wrong with his coding, and therefore contacts Dr. Rowland for help. But Rowland's wife informs him that Dr. Rowland committed suicide 2 months before. That news surprises him, and he's left alone without any help. When Claire continues doing crazy things, Brendan decides to make a coding script change to run the command to reinstall the universe. But he's not ready to do it on his computer, because he thinks it may cause problems as it did before. He therefore decides to go to the university where the quantum computer is kept, and then starts entering his coding script. After running the program, he comes back and sees the universe changing. He sees the parking lot empty and takes a bus back home. On the way, he witnesses people and buildings glitching. Suddenly, he gets a call from Claire, and she tells him that something is wrong. He asks her not to panic, and he runs into his house. When he finally reaches home, Brendan sees his wife glitching, and in the end, 2 moons collide, and finally, everything becomes dark. Moments later, Brendan's script suddenly runs again, and the world starts to reform from the beginning. When that procedure completes, we see Brendan and Claire with Sam spending their vacation on the same beach we saw at the beginning. When Sam goes looking for snails, Brendan tells her to leave the Curious George with them. Sam comes back and gives the doll to Claire, and goes back looking for snails.